What is up, lads and lasses? Today's going to be a bit of a different video. If you have seen the title, which by now, no doubt you have, this is why you clicked on the video. CrossFit is absolutely delusional. Now, before I say that, and the CrossFit guys hop on here because they're all angry, just hear me out. If you don't like it by the end, then you can comment and call me an idiot and everything else you want. So what gives me the authority to critique this? Well, I'm an under 80 kilo strongman. I'm actually getting ready to break the African log record in the under 80 kilo class by doing a 135 kilo log at my next competition. And the reason why I think strongman is a decent place to come from this is because in strongman, we actually do something relatively similar to CrossFit compared to other strength sports, which is the sport of strongman is about who is the strongest all around, which means you have to have good strength and good strength endurance. The events are very heavy, but there are events that test density or a certain endurance capacity, similar to CrossFit. Now, the thresholds are a bit different, but you guys will understand that I know what it's like to be under a heavy weight for longer than I want to and want to vomit because of sandbag runs. So I get that. I have, I think, a different perspective than most powerlifters or Olympic lifters would have because our sport actually has some sort of a similarity. I'm also in the lighter weight classes, which means we, generally speaking, have to be more in shape than the heavier weight classes. Let me just preface this by saying, guys, this isn't a CrossFit is terrible video. There are things that I genuinely like about CrossFit. One, out of all the barbell sports, you cannot argue anymore that CrossFit isn't the top or maybe second place to strongman most entertaining to watch. Now, obviously, my bias is going to be in strongman. I like the way the competitions are, but it is just the case that there is no powerlifting meet on this planet that fills up a football stadium, but CrossFit manages to do it. Right. It's very rare that weightlifting meets fill up a stadium. CrossFit manages to do it. Even strongman on the pro level, yes. On the amateurs, they don't fill up stadiums. CrossFit manages to do it. Why? Because they are hella entertaining. The second thing is there is nothing wrong with having a sport where the question in the sport is who is the best on average across a bunch of different disciplines, who has the best fitness or overall balance of attributes. That is perfectly fine. But now to get into the bad stuff, and this is where the problems in this video stem from. The things I don't like about CrossFit are twofold. One, the methodology has a problem, and it's not that training all kinds of different thresholds and different movements is a bad thing, but there is a reason why there is a massive band of CrossFit intermediates. And the reason why, what I mean by that is the people who do CrossFit for a couple of years and then they plateau at like just under a 3-plate squat and a 4-plate deadlift, and they stay there for a very long time. And the reason why is because the methodology doesn't account for the fact that people at some point need more individualized training in order to keep progressing. The method is constant rotation of movements, constant rotation of different WODs, and that's how you progress. And that doesn't work particularly well once you're no longer a beginner. You can have variations of it that continue to work, but just that approach doesn't work. It's the same reason why Matt Fraser doesn't follow the WODs on the CrossFit website, and that's not all he does. No, he's smart. He does his own programming. He figures out what he needs to do to get better, and then he goes and wins the games. That's my first problem. The second problem, which links into this, is the cult-like mentality that CrossFit has, which is very evident if you go to CrossFit gyms. I know multiple guys who were told that they could not do their own workouts in a CrossFit gym because it doesn't follow the CrossFit training methodology. I'm not going to touch on like certain movements. I don't like hipping pull-ups because it's not relevant to this video. But these two things, or I think this type of video comes from. Now, I'm going to play the video in a second, and I want to get you guys to know this guy, Paul, I actually like quite a lot of the stuff he says on his Instagram page, but this particular video really pissed me off. And the reason why is because this is a completely unfair assessment. But first, here's the video.
I looked at the Olympic totals from the 2023 CrossFit Games, and then I looked at the Olympic totals from the 2023 USAW National Championships for both men and women. Laura Horvath lifted 3 pounds less than the United States national champion in the 156-pound weight class. For the Games men, the top 3 men in the Olympic total were 701, 680, and 644. In the 195-pound weight class, the totals were 752, 733, and 730. Those were the three best lifters at the USA National Championships in the 195-pound weight class. You also have to consider that this was the 10th event of the weekend. There was certainly some cumulative fatigue, and they don't specialize in weightlifting. Despite that, the CrossFitters were near senior national levels in Olympic weightlifting, and the same goes for the women. That is an exceptionally high strength standard. Strength and power standards are very, very valued in the sport of CrossFit.
So, now that you guys have watched this, why do I say this is an unfair assessment? I mean, he's looking at top weightlifters and top CrossFitters and why not? Well, firstly, it's not an apples-to-apples comparison. You're comparing the best in the world at one thing against the best in a country at one thing. So if you wanted to make it an apples-to-apples comparison, you'd have to look at the IWF World Weightlifting Championships, where they actually have the best in the world. Now, if you look at those numbers, guys, and we're looking now at the 89 kilo weight class, which I think is a pretty one-to-one comparison to most CrossFit guys, the world record total in that class is 384 kilos, or 396 kilos, which is 873 pounds. The best total in the CrossFit Games was 317 kilos, or 701 pounds. That is a 172 pound difference. You might say that's unfair. Okay, the world champion from the World Championships in 2023, which, by the way, two of the best guys in that weight class did not compete. All right, Nino Pizzolato from Italy didn't compete, and Carlos Nassar didn't compete in this World Championship. So that's two of the biggest players were not even there. And the gold medal was a 384 kilo total, or an 846 pound total. All of the top five totaled well into 800 pounds, which is more than 100 pounds over what the best CrossFitter did. 10th place got 784 pounds, which is still 80 pounds above CrossFit. Now, you guys might go, that's not the big of a difference, guys. That's not the biggest difference in powerlifts and weightlifting. That is an insane discrepancy. Insane discrepancy. It's not even close. It's not even remotely close. Now, why is it close when you look at the US numbers and not this? Well, if you go through the list of the top 10 in the world in this weight category, you will notice something. There's not a single person from the US in there. Not one. Not even close. And there are two main reasons why. The two main reasons are, firstly, the countries that do the best at weightlifting, China, Eastern European countries, all have systems that pick athletes especially China, from a very young age, in China especially, a giant pool of people, and turn them into weightlifters. That's the first big reason. The second reason is drug use. Now, don't get all handsy and say, well, the US takes drug too. Yes, that is the case. People get caught in the US taking drugs, but it is not remotely close. USADA in the US literally has the job of catching people. There are European coaches who look at the States and go, why the hell are you trying to catch your own weightlifters? This is stupid. This is insane. This makes no sense. They don't have that there. Guys, there are US weightlifters. This is not uncommon. The guys who are in the pool who get tested 12 plus times a year and piss clean. That is not the case in CrossFit. Why is it not the case in CrossFit? Well, CrossFit does have testing for a small percentage of the people who compete. Almost always only once a year, very rarely twice. And all of it is privatized. Which means if CrossFit wants to, they can hide the test results. It's not an independent body like USADA that's contracted in order to catch people. It is completely different. So it is not fair to compare the top-level CrossFitters to the top US national weightlifters. Why? For two reasons. One, the drug testing discrepancy, and two, the US is not a good country when it comes to weightlifting. Now, you US guys are going to get very upset at that, but it is just a fact. It's a bit different in the women's divisions. Girls like Maddie Rogers, Kate Nine, they've done well. It's becoming different in the juniors, but especially in the men's, it is just not the case. In the women's, it's still a big exception. If you look at the top 10 in men's divisions, it's like China and then Eastern European countries, and then you get some other stuff sprinkled in there. South America gets sprinkled in there. Places where the drug testing is a sniff test, nationally speaking. And the only time these people get tested properly is when they go out for an international competition. Much more close to CrossFit. So it is a more fair comparison. So why do they pick the US weightlifters? Well, it is because it allows for what I like to refer to as the CrossFit Circle Jerk, which is the copium that ensues when they are not happy to be the sport that they are, which is the average at all things. There's nothing wrong with wanting to do that as a sport. Again, I am very much sold on the idea of let's find the fittest person in the world. But it is a reality in all things in life that if you want to be as good as you can at everything, you will not be the best at anything. And you have to accept then that your performances are not going to be top tier. But they go through this delusional process of trying to somehow say that CrossFit is just as good as what these people are doing. And guys, it is insanely inaccurate, but also disrespectful. You're looking at these weightlifters and going, yeah, you spend all your time specializing in this thing and trying to become the best that you can. Well, sorry, me, I barely look at this and I'm better than you because my training methods are superior. It is complete bullshit. If anybody else did this in any other sport, we'd look at it and laugh and say this is completely delusional. But they go through this mental mumbo jumbo because they're not satisfied to be the sport that's the best at average at everything. I don't know why. Again, that's fine. There's a second reason, quickly, before I get into why they never do this to powerlifting. The other reason why the totals are going to be skewed slightly is because of the press-out rule. CrossFit doesn't have a press-out rule. You can press out your weights. If you catch them, if there's a buckle in the elbows, it's fine. In Olympic lifting, there's a press-out rule. I don't like the press-out rule, but it does exist. You can't press out the weight. If there's any buckle in the elbows at the end of a jerk or the end of a snatch, the weight you must... There's a lot of decisions on that where people get, the lifts get undone or unmade because there was buckling in the elbows. Now, here is the crux of my argument, guys. There's a reason they do this with weightlifting and they don't do this with powerlifting. Because there are cases where powerlifting lifts get used in the CrossFit games. With the CrossFit total, they squat, they deadlift, and then they strict press. But the squat and deadlift are powerlifting lifts. Not just powerlifting, obviously, they're general developmental movements, but they do get tested in CrossFit. But there's a reason why they can't use that as copium. And the reason why is because a lot of the top powerlifters in the world are from the US. So I'm going to go now through some of this data. So you guys can see in 2018, they did a CrossFit total. As far as I know, this is the heaviest one. There might have been a slightly heavier one before this or after this in some of the lists, but as far as I know, this was the most impressive one. All right. The best back squat was Scott Panchak. He did a 500-pound back squat. 500-pound back squat. The best deadlift, which was which was Patrick Vellner, is, let's see here, 595, just under 600 pounds. This is the best in CrossFit. Now I've changed to openpowerlifting.org, which is a site where you can get lists of powerlifters and their best totals. And I've sorted for all tested feds, so fully drug tested, and under 183, which, by the way, that's the 83 kilo class. That is going to be much lighter than a lot of CrossFitters now, but I didn't want to go with the 93 because then somebody in the comments is going to say, well, that's unfair, they're bigger. So I went with the 83 kilo class. And where I filtered also for US-based powerlifters. Let's look here at the top. 691 squat, 744 deadlift. Right, and by the way, this is in the 163s. This is a lighter class. Let's go to the one. Here we go. Someone weighed in 181. 722 squat, 705 deadlift. Okay, 712 squat, 722 deadlift. Right, 640 squat, 711 deadlift. 787 deadlift. Right, guys, 793 deadlift. Guys, there are people in the IPF, who may not be American, but there are guys who have deadlifted over 800 pounds in this class. But if we're just looking at Americans, highest totals, nobody squatting less than 600 pounds. Not one. Some in the 700s. Highest in the highest total. The deadlifts, nobody is under the mid sixes. There's a bunch of people who are above the sevens, well into the sevens. Some people close to 8. The discrepancy is not even close, right? 150 pounds on the squat, 150 pounds on the deadlift. There we go. If you want to compare the top dogs, the best squatters from here and the best deadlifts, you're going to get a 150 pound difference if you want to look at the best versus the best. That's 300 pounds in total difference. It's not even close. So they don't make this comparison because this will show what we all logically know, which is if you're trying to be the best on average at everything, you cannot be the best at anything. That's just the way this works. So when you say strength and weightlifting movements are highly valued in CrossFit, that is definitionally not true, because they cannot be valued any more than any of the other things you have to go do. So can we please stop the copium, stop the delusion, and be good at what your sport does, which is be good at everything, but don't take away from people who bust their ass for years of their life to become the best at one particular thing and pretend that you, with your knowledge above all these people and your special methodology, is somehow just as good or better for that specialized skill that they're training for. Because it's not. It will never be, and that is okay. But please stop taking away from all these people who bust their ass in different sports by spewing shite like this. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoy this video. And I know this was a rant, but I couldn't wait on this any longer. This has been messing around in my head for ages. If you like this video, subscribe. I've got training videos coming out every day leading up to my competition. If you guys want to stay on it, I'll really appreciate it. So yeah, I will see you guys next time. Cheers.